You are listening to the Choose Your Struggle podcast, a member of the Shameless Podcast Network. Enjoying the podcast? Consider supporting it on Patreon. You'll get behind-the-scenes looks, sneak peeks, extra bonus content, and best of all, a way to interact with me, your host. You'll also get discounts on merch like tank tops and magnets, and all the other services I provide, like booking me to speak, coach or consult, or even advertise here on the podcast. Check it out in the show notes or in patreon.com/chooseyourstruggle. Plans start at as little as $3.40 a month, and all the money goes right into the podcast. All right, let's get back to the show.
Choose your struggle. Choose your struggle. Spread love. Choose your struggle.
Hello and welcome to a Monday Motivation episode of the Choose Your Struggle podcast. I hope you enjoyed Friday's episode with Kyle. And, you know, if you haven't yet, check out his stuff. Roadrunner, it's fantastic. I cannot say that enough. Now, this Monday's episode is a conversation with my high school friends, middle school friends, in the case of Pat, grade school friends. We go way back, and you know, this episode is the three of us, Pat, Spark, and I, Spark from the Cookies for Breakfast podcast, obviously, talking about some stuff from high school. Now, if you hear that and you're like, oh, that doesn't sound, you know, why would you watch that? Why would you listen to that? I get it. Trust me on this. The conversation is a good one because we actually are talking about substance. We're talking about something that you know, we sort of talked about in terms of valuing people, I think is the best way to say that. So I think it's funny because you listen to some, you know, us dive into some shit from high school. That's great. But more than that, we talk about how we value our friends, how we value, how we see value in ourselves. So enjoy this. Tell me what you think. As always, you know, anyone who reaches out gets a sticker. Anyone who, the first person to reach out, I should say, gets a magnet. So don't hesitate, reach out. And I hope you enjoy this conversation.
So this is a new thing that I'm doing in my podcast that I just made up called "What's Beef," where I actually this might be fun to do in the future, but Jay and I have a disagreement from the past, and we decided to settle it, or at least discuss it on wax, and we brought Sir Diddles along as always to mediate, aka incite.
I don't have any assumptions that it's going to be, as you said, settled today. That's not a thing that I'm assuming. I do believe that we can hash out some of the things we are misremembering. That is 100% true.
Yes, Jay, give us the timeline here, because this is something I like. I can't argue because I don't remember the specifics.
So, sort of broad overview is that in high school there was a group of us that were very close. Like I would say, I don't know what, 7 of us, if you count CJ.
6.
No, CJ was the 7th, wasn't he?
Okay, well, we're already in disagreement.
Okay, well, whatever. Point is, there was a group of us that were very close, and we went like everywhere together, or pieces of us went everywhere together. If you've listened to Spark Show before, you know, you've heard us talk about parts of this. This is not new. Junior year of high school, there is a moment, this is what we were talking about today, where we were standing in front of my parents' house. And for the context on this part, I was the oldest person in this group by about a month over you, Pat. And I got my driver's license first by like a week over Pat. And then our buddy Malcolm was the third by 6 months later. So like most of the places that we went as a group, I was driving because Pat lived really far away. And the only time he would drive if it was around school or something like that, then he would, you know, whatever. But most of the point I was driving, and my first car was a minivan. So it really set up for people to be grabbing a ride with me. That happened a lot. But junior year, I switched to a Cadillac. So that's how we remember that this moment was junior year, because the Cadillac was sitting out in front of my parents' house. And that's where this moment took place. for whatever reason, in this moment, Spark decided to tell us that he had decided that all of us had roles in this group. And for more background on that, there was definitely an element of all of us, had our skills. I will not dispute that at all. But Spark's view on this was very cut and dry. So he thought of himself as the best on certain things, when in reality, a lot of the time that is true. Spark has a lot of skills. I will never dispute that. The opposite. He is a very skilled person. But there were moments where other people did some of these things better than he did, or at least to the same extent. It didn't matter to him. That was his role. That was a thing he was very, a lot of different things he believed he was the best at. No one could come close. That is the understanding of why this wasn't surprising that Spark decided we all had roles in this group. And the thing we're talking about today is that Spark decided that my role in this group was as the driver. Now, later on, Pat and others would jokingly call me Turtle from Entourage, because the actor whose name I do not remember,
Jeremy
and
Ferrara.
Sure, we do actually look alike. Our physique is very similar. We both are short white dudes that are overweight, wearing jerseys and shaved heads. So there are parts of us that are very similar. So later, this would be a much bigger thing. This directly played into that name that they would give me of Turtle. But at the time, that was not a thing. The Entourage was not a thing yet. And it was very offensive to me as a person in this group who, Spark was my best friend, to hear him tell me in my mind that my only role was their driver. Now, to be fair, Spark didn't mean it that way. He has said that multiple times ever since. But I was not the only person that was upset with him for these roles that he had decided. There were other members who either were flat out like, yo, dude, that's not cool, or were like, that's fucking weird. Like, why would you say that? Nobody was like, yay, Spark, thank you for telling us what our role is. Only Spark was happy about this conversation.
I want everyone to notice during this how I sat silently.
You did a wonderful job. I'm very
respectfully proud of you. How I allowed him space.
That's why I'm laughing, just because your facial expressions. I was like, oh, he wants to jump, but he's not going to.
I was watching that as well, and I'm very proud of you for not doing so.
All right, so that is how Jay remembers this. What Jay said for the most part was correct. I will say that I don't think that I just suddenly started like Jay was talking about maybe going to Wendy's later, and I was like, what's great about Wendy's? How everyone at there works, because they're a team together. I don't think that's what happened. I think it was, and then also point of that I want to make people is like, I did assign everyone's roles, but it wasn't me being like, this is what you're supposed to do. I was saying that our group naturally has worked well, and these are the things that our group has done. Is that still weird? Probably. I'm not. None of us are filling out a resume. None of this is going on our college essay. But so anyway, those are the points. And I also want to say that this wasn't roles in our general friendship. It was roles specifically in regards to like women and like maybe less generally social interactions in general. So those are the points. And I thought that I communicated that at the time. Obviously, this was 16 or 17. I can't promise you that I did. And we're having this discussion, so it would sound as if I did not.
Well, and I would say that and that's where when I said that I have no doubt you didn't mean it that way, but remember that a lot of those things were very tied into our identities at the time. And I think that's why I don't remember what you called easy or what you said is, but I remember
basement.
Right. Very similar, right? Yeah. Is that you said his only role was having a basement where his parents didn't come down a lot and we could do whatever the fuck we wanted. That to him is very minimalistic the way it was to me as the driver, right? Because like I was saying before, you and I both were the ones that brought a lot of new people in. That was a thing you and I are both very good at just in life, period. You and I, we gather people. We're both very outgoing and we gather people around us. you still to this day see that as only your thing, when in reality, I mean, like everything else, it's on a spectrum. You overall probably did it the most, but there were periods where I brought a lot of really great people in around us. So did Easy, so did Quick, I mean, Pat is responsible for, a whole group of people that came into our lives. So I guess what I'm saying is that, you saw this thing, you saw these things in a very ironclad way, and in doing so reduced, Earl to his parents' basement and me to my car. And it's like, in that moment, I'm not surprised that we were like, look, I'm sure you're not intentionally saying that we're like worthless people, but the way it's coming out is you're saying to us the only good parts of our only role here in this group is for me to drive people around and for Easy to have the safe space. You know what I mean? Like, that's not, again, I'm sure that's not what you meant. That is how it came out to all of us. And that's why most of us, yeah, me and Easy were the most angry about it. But even other people were like, dude, what the hell? Like, what are you trying to do here?
So so you kind of both sides of that, because like, if you didn't have a car, would he have hung out with you? Absolutely. By the same token, the integral dynamic of the friendship would have been very different, because it wouldn't have been us on AIM, you two fighting over who's picking who or whenever you're picking them up.
That did happen a lot of the time. You say a really good point, and I think that's what gets down to this, is that it did tap into that insecurity, right? For me, would people have hung out with me if I didn't have a car? For Easy, would we have hung out with him? His house was all the way up in Mason. Like, I've joked with him and with all of y'all about how, like, before I started driving, my parents were like, we don't want you to be friends with him anymore. Not because he was a bad dude. Like, in middle school, he was my best friend, but he lived so far away that my parents were like, we don't want to drive you here anymore. So there's got to be some insecurity in that, of him going, do all y'all come over here because you like me or because my parents give us the leeway, right? And to be fair, your parents did too. Your basement was sacred, and whatever happened down there stayed down there. It was also very far away. That was sort of similar in that respect.
Well, I had to trump it up with my parents making breakfast the next day if we all crashed there.
That's fair.
Yeah, I had to have my selling points.
For the record, for the listeners, Mason from us was depending on where you live, but from the general populace, it was 20 to 30 minutes, which I know for Chicago people doesn't sound very far, but shut your mouth.
And that's where, for me, you guys are like, oh, you're on the other side of town. Why do I have to come all the way over there? I'm like, I come all the way over there every day. So shut up.
In Cincinnati,
I did not argue that.
Anything more than 15 minutes in Cincinnati, not just for us, for Cincinnati, period, is forever.
Correct.
Because everything in Cincinnati with traffic is usually less than 20.
No, especially considering he did not have his own car or driver's license. Spit was impressively mobile.
Yep, that is
so
true.
I will give credit for that.
Thank you. I didn't get my driver's license. I think I did an episode about it. I know I did something, but I didn't get my driver's license until I was 21 or 22. So way after the thing. But I like.
Wait, but I want you to comment on that piece, because Dids raised a really good point that I do think gets down to it, right? And this is the part where I think is going to be really crucial for my episode. Knowing that had to have been an insecurity, right? And in fairness, you weren't trying to be mean, but when you reduce people this way, you expose some insecurities. It's not surprising to me that I got very upset because you reduced me to my car, and for Earl to get really upset because you reduced him to his basement. Now, does that make sense to you where that could expose some insecurities?
Oh, I mean, it definitely made sense. I'm gonna hit kind of all those points together, but it definitely makes sense. I would, in my brain, say like we were kicking it in 7th grade when just cause. We were kicking it in 8th grade just cause. We were kicking it in 9th grade until you got your license just cause. We didn't hang out more or less once you got a car, at least not in my book. I mean, obviously it made things easier, but I'm saying functionally we didn't do more stuff. But I still.
What? No, but actually, I don't think that's true.
No, I'm saying.
No. What year was? Remember how we all got into a really big fight? Do you remember this?
Year.
Was that freshman? No, it wasn't. Was that freshman year?
The one that I remember was freshman year.
What year did Loveland teach? It was in her class.
No, Richardson was freshman year.
Yeah. So that would have been sophomore year, right? Or junior?
Sophomore.
I thought I had Zell. Okay.
I was a Kleiner that year.
Yeah. You had Zell sophomore year. So it was when we had Loveland. So it was me, Easy, and Quick literally got into a fist fight in English class. And that started this whole rift.
For what? So, I had prejudice?
Oh, I was thinking of a different fight. But
I don't remember what you're talking about. You don't remember this though? We didn't talk for like months.
Yes, because that split our group into two halves, and that kind of happened all the rest of the way through high school, where we were all friends, but when it really got down to it, it was me, Jay, and Diddy at school. Like if you're gonna put a gun to people's heads, and Quick and Easy. And then
but this is what I'm talking about. This is why I think this is important. I think this was all the same thing, is that you were sort of saying to us like, okay, this rift has already happened. And we like to this day, Quick is one of my closest friends in the world.
Yeah, love him.
But there was a rift there. And so for you to expose some of these insecurities, it's like, would I still be a part of this thing if I didn't have a car? Would Easy still be a part of this thing if he didn't have a basement, right? Because there was some of this. There was a falling out for a period.
Well, I'll bring in Diddy on this as well, because to address that, because Diddy made a good point, and I want to say, I wasn't saying that. And I do feel like I know I said this because it's obvious. I wasn't saying that literally all Jay does is drive. Literally all Diddy does, or all Easy does is have a basement. Because like you said, Jay has a basement. Diddy has a basement. Quick has a basement. We've all hung out. Eventually, Quick drove. He's like, I was saying that it's kind of like we're on a team, right? So in lacrosse, for example, I was a good athlete overall, trash at lacrosse. So when my job was to go out there, block people's shots, knock a couple bodies around. If the ball came to me, get it to Diddy or someone who knows what they're doing as soon as possible, and then get off the field. That was my role. That didn't mean that I wasn't gifted enough to maybe play defense a bit more or do whatever. It's that's what best helped the team in that moment. I didn't feel like Diddy thought like he was like that he was more important necessarily than me, just that it was a different role. Now, actually, Diddy was way more important to the team than me, but I'm saying that it never felt that way. Like it never came across. Like, and I hope the same thing would go for other sports. We'll let Diddy speak on that pretty quickly, but that's what I was trying to get to, is that I did and do to this day for sure. And I don't think it's an argument. It's that I did a much better job of bringing people. Better is the wrong word. I was much more successful in bringing people in for the group to meet and hang out with. But that didn't mean that, like I said, Diddy, like Jade said, Diddy crushed it with the McNick crowd. That was the group of girls that we hung out with for 8 to 10 years after we initially met them. I'm blanking a little bit more on Jay in high school, but definitely in college, Jay was knocking it out the park, bringing people together. So I'm not saying that other people didn't do it. I would give question to maybe Quick on that one, but I just was for sure. And that's like to this day, overall, something that I really enjoy doing and bringing people in on, is kind of connecting dots for people. And I haven't met someone, if we're talking like dating wise or like hookup wise, someone that has kind of met my energy in that.
But I also think that that's your perspective, right? And I understand what you're saying, and I think it goes back again to my original point, was I didn't think you were saying to me, this is literally the only thing you're good at. But what I felt that you were saying was that it almost the most important, and you are saying that in a sense, right?
And that specific. And that specific role,
right. And
yes.
I'm saying to you that even that is upsetting, because it's not a quality. It's not, your thing that you are very proud of. You're right. You are good at that. And I would also say that again, there were points where those of us who did that just as well, it's also a thing I take pride in.
You sure?
That is, but that's a skill. That is a really amazing quality about a person, right? And it's not that you were wrong about that. You did that really well. But you understand the difference between that and driving. You know, it's like you have a skill that you're very good at, and you apply it to making all of our lives better. Jay, you have a car. Like, that's the difference there. You know what I mean?
Okay, I'm gonna just add in a second. Diddy, what are your thoughts?
Well, no, and especially because, you know, obviously, especially we always take to the sports metaphor thing. You know, what's funny is, you know, especially lacrosse, I was a ball taxi. I was the clear plan. It was, you can run. That's your job. Especially my first year, what was it, sophomore year when I started playing, I couldn't throw even half the time still. So it was, especially when half of our defense was in the school play. All of a sudden, I was playing long ball. I had no idea what I was doing besides I'd throw my brother's stick every once in a while. But the coach basically, it was Millman at the time. He goes, you get the ball, just take off and run. So like for me, it was, yeah, I was a ball taxi. So what's interesting is I didn't necessarily feel like, oh, I was the player for that either. And then, you know, fast forward to college, I was a face-off maybe. All I did was face off. There's literally the FOGO stands for face off, get off. All you do is face off and get off the field. That's your role. And that's all literally, because, you know, my freshman year, I was on man up, man down. Like I was on every utility play, offense, defense. And by junior year, the most successful, statistically at least, season I ever had was literally filling that one role. So I think it kind of goes both ways. It's like, is that all I was good at? Absolutely not. But was that my most important value to the team? Sure.
But you're also a Hall of Famer. We always have to mention.
Well, that was the year I was an All-American.
But
too.
also,
so the year I focused on what I was really good at. That was the year I did the best. So
that's still a quality. That's still a thing you're really good at, right?
That's what I'm saying.
And there's a difference between saying that and saying you're really good at face-offs. You own a stick. You're only here because you own a stick.
No, but there's points like I was literally only on the team to face off. But then the next year, also we lost half our offense because I graduated. And every time I had a hat trick, we won the game. So I was like, okay, maybe I need to be a scorer now too. So yeah, did I want to be seen as only facing off? Probably not. By the same token, if we're looking at the greater good of the team, is that my role potentially on a given day? Probably.
And yes, it is a skill versus a product or versus something that you own, like something that could be taken away or given. And I mean, I'm not saying that they're equal as far as how they make people feel, but it's like I can line up, you know, people in Marymount Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 4 p.m. waiting at their house, primed and ready to meet us all. But if I can't get there, it doesn't matter. If I can also be driven to any place in the city, but if there's no one to meet us there, what are we talking about? If we meet the people and stuff pops off, but we're at Kenwood Mall and we need to go somewhere, which wouldn't have stopped us, but let's say it did, and we needed to get somewhere safer, having nowhere to go is a major problem. If we, so I'm not arguing that my role that of kind of maybe procuring is as nice or as representative of who I am as a person as saying ride. But that's where my point of this isn't about what your overall skill set is. All of us, to varying degrees, provided all of the necessary things for social interaction. It's just like when our starting five is on the court, you know, Kobe hits the shots more than Rick Fox. Rick Fox can shoot. No one out here thinks that Rick Fox can't put up 20 if you need him, but you don't need him to because there's a better option in Kobe. Whereas Kobe can pass. People say he can't, but he can. But Derek Fisher is much better at running that offense.
But nobody includes the water boy in with the starting five.
And that's your framing of that. That's
because
your
the
framing.
water boy is only there because he can get water.
No, it's a team effort. Everyone is needed. Okay, it doesn't. You're saying you're the water boy in that. No, you're not. There's five people. You're one of the five. You're Derek Fisher, Kobe, you're Rick Fox, you're Robert Ory.
Right, but those people all have skills. Derek Fisher is the brains on the court. Rick Fox is like, he was the veteran presence. He was a calming presence. These people have skills. Yeah. In your analogy, you would be saying to me, you're here because you're the moral compass of the group, which would have been a ridiculous thing to say, but that's a skill. That is a skill. That is a quality of a person. No, you're not saying this guy only starts because he owns a jersey. That is what I am saying.
I think it would be more, I think the better compare would be like he starts because he's 7 feet tall, right? Like that's like That's
Sean
all
Bradley.
there. Yes.
Yes, you called me Sean Bradley.
Well, that's rude.
Even in Space Jam, he sucked.
But yeah,
They took his skills, and that monster had 0 stats.
Yeah,
that's how
true.
bad Sean Bradley was.
So, yeah, and I think this is tough to reflect on because I'd like to think, we're twice as old as we were when this conversation happened initially. So
that's so sad.
I know, right? I'd like to think, though, we've all matured a little bit. So I think that's what's tough, is because obviously now we're acknowledging. So I think, it sounds like, and obviously I wasn't there, and I'm just being a harmonizer for why not. But like, was it that at the time it wasn't so much of your only skill is this, it's especially with bringing people around, that is also a skill that Jay values in himself. So then by not acknowledging that, did that then degrade the feeling of worth or value that he brought? I guess. I don't know.
Or skill at all. In fact, we can close this by you saying, all right, you're right. I gave you a role instead of a skill. Here is what I would have given you if I was giving skills. That is my deep, like the part that really gets to me.
Is this the closure you mean?
Yeah, it's the closure. It's saying, instead of giving you a role because you owned a car, say because you were dependable, because you were, a great, like, I could trust you to be a cool dude to hang, I don't know, whatever that is a personal skill or a quality about a good person other than having a set of keys.
Okay, here's what because I realized we didn't, this should be in the beginning, but I didn't. So what the initial statement was, so people understand the way I remember this, and again, this could be wrong, but I hit on 5 points with 5 dudes. So I said, Jay drives, Easy has the spot we go. I'm establishing the connection with the girl. I believe I said Quick was the mouth of the situation, right? So like,
which is fair.
Kind of am like, hello, but then I kind of like, hello, stop, please. And then him. Like, that's kind of what I did. And then CJ was kind of the eye candy or whatever, because that didn't mean that I thought also that CJ was better looking than us. It meant that he was quiet and didn't do anything but stand there, but somehow that ended up working out. So,
because he's an attractive man.
Yeah, but like all of us are cute. You know what I'm saying? Like let's but anyway, Diddy's shaking his head. No. Plenty of girls like Diddy, right? It actually blew my mind.
I was saying you two are very attractive.
That like there were girls that liked me and Diddy and Jay, and I'm like, what do you like? Heartbeats? What are you interested in? We don't look anything alike, and we're not similar in personality either.
Like friendship.
But that was the 5, right? And then everyone pretty much had arguments, I think maybe except CJ, where he was like, yeah, okay. That's
he was like, whatever.
You're not going to argue against the fact. And so that was
the only one that I'll agree with is CJ's.
But that was like, we had goals, and that was to get this stranger who we didn't know to, if we were interested, to someone's house, right? So like, this is the specific job.
No. Stop. You have to rephrase that. It sounds like we're kidnapping people. Please rephrase what
that's what you're hearing. To have someone be enthusiastic and excited to spend time with us in a private setting.
Much better. Thank you.
So that is the specific job I'm talking about. And in that, it's a pretty cut and dry experience. But I will say that obviously, or maybe not obviously, let me take that out. I will say that there were many aspects of each of our personalities, but I'll talk to Jay specifically here, that made that possible. Because, for instance, once you do all of the things you need to do, once you say hello, you get the number, you get them the place, you tell them where to go, or you go to their house or whatever it is, everyone is in that room together. You've achieved that goal, but then what? Then what? And and if you don't have the interpersonal skills and the trustworthiness of the group to kind of bounce off each other, because we're all awkward, we're all trying to figure out who we are as people. If those people can't interpersonally keep their attention, make them feel safe, make them feel comfortable, and advance whatever the plans are of the night, it's not going to work. And as long as Jay wasn't in a bad mood, which did happen, or Jay didn't like the people we were with, which definitely happened, he was an integral part of making those boys and girls feel safe and entertained and comfortable by cracking jokes, by not. Actually, here's something I will say that Jay was the best at in our group when he was in a good mood, was taking a joke, was being being okay with, and like Jay's making a face, but this is real because all of us know people that take themselves too seriously and can never be a part of a situation where they're not being exalted or held up highly. And Jay and I get like that sometimes, myself even. Jay, when he was in a good mood, was the best at, and yes, when he was in a good mood, was the best.
Stop saying that.
At, existing in that space. And if it meant him being the one that makes the jokes, if it meant him being the one that's the butt of the jokes, if it meant him being roasting someone else or kind of rapping a freestyle or creating kind of something in the moment to entertain people, Jay was always much better at that than the rest of us.
Thank you.
That's what I will say.
Part of that was very sweet. You have this ability to like give someone a hug while you're hugging them, stab them, and then squirt lemon juice in it, but then be like, "Let me bandage that." Like it's a full service.